What is up, everybody? It's your boy MaximusBlack with another real estate video, and today we're going to be talking about cash flow. Cash flow. This is essentially what cash flow is when you have a rental property and you rent it out. It is the money that you have left over after all expenses. So we're talking you've paid your mortgage, your interest, your taxes, any utility bills, insurances, maybe you have some maintenance, maybe you have property management, major CapEx, capital expenditures that you put money aside to replace roofs that may happen in 10, 20 years. We're talking appliances, you name it. After all of the bills are paid, it's that little tiny slither of money that you have left over. And we're going to be discussing, is it really true that you can just quit your day job using cash flow? And how realistic and what kind of time frame would you be looking at in order to get in that position? Because we are often sold a dream that if you just buy real estate, that you can quit your W-2 job and have your tenants pay all of the bills, and then there's this nice nest egg at the end of each month that you can draw from and use to travel the world and sit on beaches, collect rent, live the good life, spend all kinds of time with family and friends. We've heard it a million times over on many different blogs and Bigger Pockets, YouTube channels, Instagram feeds, etc. And I've been a real estate investor for 11 years, and I still, to this day, do not live off of or touch my cash flow. And I don't want that to scare you guys. I don't want you to think, oh, well, this is just all a complete and utter waste of time. I'm not going to get into real estate because if this guy hasn't, retired off of X amount of units and 11 years in the game, then I sure as shit don't want to. I don't want you to have that mind, that state of mind. There are plenty of ways to make money in real estate. Cash flow is just one of them, but it is the hottest topic, and it's the sexiest out of all of the different ways that you can make money in real estate. So with that being said, let's get into the hard truth of cash flow. So first and foremost, most of you guys that are going to be getting a property, maybe you just start off with one, okay? Now, what is typically good cash flow on one property? Really any amount that is above and beyond all expenses that I've said earlier. So for example, if you have a house, don't make fun of my drawings. If you have a house, a rental, okay, and after all expenses, you clear $300 a month. Okay, so you've got $300 a month in cash flow, right? This is after all expenses. Like I said earlier, taxes, insurance, maintenance, property management, if you have property management, all of these things, right? You have $300 a month. And perhaps it cost you, maybe your property was $500,000 to get into, right? So maybe this property costs you $500,000 to get into, and you put 20% down, so you're in, for $100,000 plus closing costs, all that stuff. So we'll say you're in for, $110,000 in cash. So you've managed to save up $110,000 in cash to get your first rental property. Now, this could be a duplex. This could be a triplex, right? This could be a triplex, and you could be getting $100 in cash flow per door, okay? This is just an example. Now, you put in $110,000, you saved up, you've analyzed, 40, 50 deals, you finally got the courage, you pull the trigger, you get yourself this rental property, you get tenants in there, you get 3 tenants in there, everything is going good, and then after all expenses, you are on average getting $300 per month. Now, $300 per month, it isn't changing anybody's life. Now, I'm not saying that is a bad thing. I mean, who wouldn't like an extra $300 a month? But remember, you saved up $110,000 to put yourself into a position to get $300 a month or $3,600 a year. Now, $3,600 a year, that's pretty good. You know, it's like, you know, that'll pay for maybe your car payment. You know what I mean? Like you got a $300 a month car payment. Maybe that covers that. But here is the truth, okay, about cash flow. Number one, it took you a long time, likely, to save up $110,000 to get into this property. But the truth of the matter is, all it takes is some random thing to happen. So, for example, you know, somebody, let's just say, you know, 2 appliances break, okay, in one of these units in the triplex, and each appliance cost you $500 a piece, right? So, and that's like on the low end. So, but let's just say it costs you. So there goes $1,000 right there of that 36. So now you're left with 2,600, right? Say in another unit, you know, a window breaks or there's a leak, which often happens. A toilet clogs and you got to call a plumber for, you know, $300, $400, whatever the case may be. This cash flow can go so fast. I'm telling you, you might go 11 months of absolutely nothing, collecting that $300, and then on month 12, you have one expense that costs you $3,600. Like these things happen, right? Now, it also depends on the asset you're buying. You know, is this triplex something that is pretty much brand new? Is it something that is older? Maybe it's from the 80s. And, you know, you've got a bunch of, you've got hot water tanks that, you know, may have been replaced a couple of times. Now you've got another one that's coming up. Maybe the roof is, you know, all of these things. There is shit that happens. I'm telling you. And shit happens on every single property. Now, it might not happen, like I said, in month 1 or month 3. It might not even happen in year 1 or year 2, right? But things are going to happen. Now, this video isn't to scare you guys, right? This is just the truth of what it is. So oftentimes when landlords want to live off of cash flow, and before I get there, now just imagine you've got this triplex situation and you've got this times, I don't know, 10. So say you've got 10 triplexes, right? And each triplex is bringing you in that $300 a month, right? So you've got now, instead of $300 a month in cash flow, you've got $3,000 a month in cash flow, right? Oops. Now, $3,000 a month in cash flow, that's a pretty good amount of money, right? Like, there are people that can live off of $3,000 a month. You know, and maybe this would allow somebody to quit their day job full-time, and maybe now they can do it part-time or do something that they love to do that doesn't pay so much. And, you know, maybe they just drive Uber for 2 days a week or whatever the case may be. $3,000 a month can give people freedom. The problem is if you have 10 triplexes at $300 a month and you're making $3,000 a month because you've got 10 of them, that's a fair amount of cash. But if you are living off of this $3,000 a month and your living expenses is, say, $2,800 a month, or maybe it's the full $3,000 a month, you have become fully reliant on this $3,000 a month every month in order to live. And this is when you get things like slumlords. This is when you have to choose between doing maintenance on your properties that you know things are about to start turning bad. Like maybe you keep getting a call about a washer that just keeps breaking over and over and over again, and you're being too cheap to spend $800 to get a new one in there, but instead you keep calling that repairman and paying him $150 every other month to do it, you need that $3,000 a month. And when you put yourself in that situation, oftentimes that's when mistakes can happen. Cash flow is nothing but gravy. It's nothing but icing on the cake. And what I mean by that is cash flow allows you to hold your asset for years, hopefully decades, without having to sell the property or getting into a position where you start to hate real estate because you feel as though you've got to go into your own pocket and take out from your everyday life to service your properties and the tenants, because it's your job as a landlord to make sure that people are living in a place that they can be proud of, that is safe, and in a place that they can have pride in. Because if they don't have those things, then they are going to trash your property. They're going to treat it like a motel dump, right? And you don't want that, because then that costs you more money. And when you become reliant on the cash flow to live off of, that's when a lot of real estate investors start making mistakes, and they start trying to cut corners, and oftentimes it ends up with them having to sell the property, or they get into a position where they hate what they're doing, and then they end up selling it, and then they're just not in the game long enough to really see the ultimate benefits of real estate. Now, with all that being said, is cash flow bad? No, cash flow is amazing. And cash flow is what we all aspire to get within real estate. But I find that cash flow isn't really a huge factor in retirement or being able to live off of until you are well into your real estate journey. Because think about this. If you spent that 100 now at times 10 right now, instead of 110,000, you've got $1 million in cash into those 10 triplexes. But yeah, maybe you've only had these now. This is like a year one thing, right? But what happens when you get to year 10 with these 10 triplexes? So now you've got 10 triplexes, right? That $3,000 a month that you've been getting, you're not living off of. You're just reinvesting it. You're keeping some money in for reserves. Whenever something bad happens, you have the cash to go ahead and take care of it. You're saving up that money, and then once it balloons into something nice, you have another down payment to go buy your 11th triplex, or maybe you go into an apartment build, like a larger apartment building, whatever. I'm just using the triplexes in this one for an example. But what happens with your 10 triplexes after 10 years? Okay? Well, during those 10 years, your rents have all been going up, right? Every single year, you might be raising your rents 2%, 5%, right? I don't know what the laws are in your specific province or state, but here in Nova Scotia, it is 5% a year is the rental cap. So you're raising your rents 5% a year. So suddenly that $300 a month at year 2 might be at 10 times, right? Let's say $3,000 a month. That might end up being $3,300 a month instead of $3,000. And then the next year it might be $3,600 a month. And then the next year it might be $4,100 a month, right? Because remember, you're raising your rents, but your expenses are going to go up because insurance goes up every year. The costs of, having lawn care, snow removal, just everything. I mean, inflation, it's just been wild, right? Like all of these things go up. Here in Canada, if you live in Canada, maybe you do a renewal and your interest rate has gone up, or whatever the case may be. And it could also go down. If you're in the States, you got like 30-year fix. You don't have to worry about that. But like your income is going to go up. So maybe after 10 years, instead of $3,000 a month in cash flow, you are now getting $6,000 a month in cash flow, right? After holding the property for 10 years. Of course, these are hypothetical numbers, right? But this is just sort of how it works. But the thing that we do not talk about is all of the other benefits. Now, if you would have been living off that $3,000 a month or not reinvesting it in your properties, perhaps you had larger CapEx expenditures that cost you thousands of dollars. Maybe you would have sold 3 or 4 of those triplexes to get chunks of money and then pay capital gains on it, right? Because sure as shit, if you're going to sell them, you're probably not going to 1031 exchange it if you live in the States. Here in Canada, it's just going to be a taxable event. And you haven't been able to ride out the benefits. Now, it's just a cash flow. Now, at $6,000 a month, now maybe you can take $3,000 or $4,000 of that per month to live off of, and then you're leaving that spread, that $2,000 or $3,000 a month in reserves building up, right? Or maybe you're taking that $2,000 or $3,000 and starting to pay down properties aggressively to get that to get those mortgages paid off, so that you're free and clear, and then it's pure cash flow. Cash flow takes years and years and years to build. Yes, there are unicorn deals. For sure, there are unicorn deals where you can get lucky and you can buy a property and suddenly you're cash flowing $1,000 a month after year one. You know, there are times where you can buy distressed properties, put in a bunch of equity, do a burr, you know, pull a whole bunch of money out and still cash flow. I've done it, right? But with these high interest rates and the way that the market is, it's very, very difficult to find these, and you cannot rely on these things, right? So the cash flow really goes up over time. And in the beginning, you don't necessarily have to cash flow $1,000 a door. You know, if you're cash flowing $100 or $200 a door after all expenses, and you're looking at it like real expenses, right? Not like pretending things don't happen, then I think you're in a pretty good position, especially if you're buying in the right area, because then you've got things like appreciation. Remember, you were spending $500,000 for each one of these triplexes, but on average, every 7 to 10 years, a property doubles in value, right? So if you've got $500,000 property and you've got 10 of them, okay, that is a decent amount of cash right there, right? So you've got $5 million in assets, but over 10 years, that could be then worth $10 million, right? Now, if you had that one property at $500K and it doubles in value, it might be worth $1 million in 10 years. So not only have you have good cash flow, but you've built in $500,000 in equity. In equity. I keep hitting this eraser by accident. What can you do with that $500,000? Well, you can sell the property and you'll lose the cash flow from that, but you're going to have, $500,000. And you can roll that into a larger asset. Maybe you go for a 15, 20 unit apartment building. Maybe you just take the cash, and then you put it in the stock market and I don't know, right? But you have options. The real money is made on the hold, not the cash flow. The real money is made from the appreciation. And we didn't even talk about the principal pay down. As you've been holding these properties for the next 10 years, every single month that your tenants are making payments or paying their rent, you are paying down little bits of the principal. So it's like a forced savings account. Plus you've got the appreciation. Plus you've got the cash flow. And we didn't even talk about the tax savings, right? Huge incentives if you live in the United States, right? Even here in Canada, there's huge tax savings, right? So when you add up all of these things, that's where the real power of holding real estate. Cash flow is simply a tool or a piece of the income to hold property, right? That's all it is. You want it to hold your property. It allows you to weather the storms. When the markets go up, when the markets go down, when somebody's late on rent or somebody doesn't pay or you have to do an eviction, or you got to do a unit turnover and it's a $5,000, a $10,000 expense after somebody's been in there for 7-8 years. you have the money to do that. You do not have to go into your own pocket and try and take away from your everyday life to go and service these rental properties. Your properties are self-sustaining. It is its own ecosystem. It is its own thing. And you don't have to impede on your personal life, which puts pressure on you and your family, and it stresses you out. And at some point, it may put you into a position where you either have to sell or you feel like you want to because of the headache of it. Do you understand what I'm saying? So even for me, 11 years in, right, and I make cash flow, right? I have a cash flow video from 4 or 5 days ago where a 15-unit apartment building has cash flowed us $7,300 a month last month, right? And this month, we're at the end of January. This month, it's probably going to be right around the same because there was no issues, right? And that's just one property, right? I've got other properties as well that are all cash flowing. I've got one single family home that is only cash flowing me $200 a month. Now, I will say it is grossly under rented. I could be getting $300 more a month in rent, but I've had tenants in there for 9 years. And I only do the 5% a year, and I did not raise anybody's rent during COVID because, I was in a privileged position. I didn't need the extra money. I probably should have done even a small amount, but, at the end of the day, these are the decisions that I made and how I ran my business, right? Knowing the position that I was in, and I had other properties that could make up for it. But, that single family home only bringing in $200 a month in cash flow. If a washer dryer goes out, that's a whole year of cash flow gone, just like that. But that doesn't mean that property didn't go up in value. That doesn't mean that the principal pay down of them paying the rent isn't netting me in a good, $600-700 a month each month, right? The cash flow is just the cream. So what I'm trying to say to you guys here is this: cash flow is extremely important. But don't get into real estate thinking that I'm just going to go ahead and buy 1 or 2 properties. I'm going to be able to quit my day job, because chances are, especially in this market with these interest rates, it's just not feasible. Unless you're like living at home and you don't really have bills, you might be able to get by. But I'm talking about like people that, save up a whole bunch of money, and next thing you know it, like up top here, you're like, damn, I spent $110,000. I'm only getting $300 a month. Like, what? Like, this ain't exciting. But that is a narrow-minded and a short-minded mindset. You got to think long-term. And long-term, the cash flow suddenly will just boom, right? As you start paying down these properties and you get new mortgage terms, if you've been paying down a property for 15 years and you've got it on a 30-year if you're in the States, you can refinance out. You can either pull equity or not pull any equity, right? Because if you pull out equity, you're getting more debt, which means your cash flow will be less, but you'll have the chunk of money. But if you just get a new term, and if you owed $500,000 before, and then suddenly now you only owe $250,000, that mortgage payment is going to be half. So there might be, if your cash flow before was only $300, you might suddenly be cash flowing $600. Just like that, right? It's all about how long you can stay in the game. That's that. And I'm telling you, after 5 years, you're going to start to see a difference. After 10 years, you're going to go, whoa, what's going on? Right? I'm now getting at that stage where I'm starting to plan out, okay, how many more years is it going to take me before I can start to live off of and start tapping into the cash flow? And, I'm probably still about 3 years away before I'm going to start tapping into some cash flow each and every month. So I don't really have anything else to add. If you guys have any questions in the comment section, let me know. Again, don't get into this thinking you're going to buy 1 or 2 properties and you're just going to quit your day job. It is always good to hold your W-2, your regular job, while you accumulate rental properties, because that's going to give you stability. and stability is everything in real estate. It is about how long you can be in the game. And I'm telling you, the more properties that you start to snowball, it literally snowballs. It compounds, and it happens quick. You will build wealth. You know, it'll be paper gains because like you can't tap into a lot of this stuff until you do a cash out refinance or you sell. But you want to get into a position so that you have those options, and then you can look at your life, your situation, your age, how much time you want to spend, and you can start to strategize how you want to start tapping into the cash flow or the equity, or maybe it's a sale. Maybe you're going to 1031 exchange to upgrade into the next bigger thing and get those tax savings if you're in the States, or maybe here in Canada, you might just want to offload, because oftentimes if you've got 10 triplexes in 10 years, you might say, you know what, let me sell half of these, right? I've built $10 million worth of equity. Let me sell half of these. And then with all of that money, I'll pay the capital gains. With all that money, I will go and pay off the other 5 in full, right? And I'll talk about this strategy in another video, but maybe you just pay off all 5. So now instead of, 10 triplexes, you have 5, right? You have 5 triplexes. But now all 5 are paid off. Now you don't have a mortgage payment. So if you don't have a mortgage payment and each tenant is paying $1,500 a month, $1,500 times 3, right? That's $4,500 a month. Boom, right there. That's more cash flow than what you were making when you had 10 of them, right? Because you're doing 3,000, right? But this is all dependent on the strategy that you want to take and where you're at in life. Because, if you're really young, maybe, you're like, shit, I can work another 10 years at my W-2 and keep stacking up money and keep accumulating properties. And then, when I'm 45, 50 years old, you're holding millions of dollars in real estate, and then you have options. Then you go, okay, hey, maybe I'll sell half. Maybe I'll sell all of the properties that give me a headache and that lose me sleep at night, if any, and I'll keep the really solid ones. Maybe I'm only going to keep 2 or 3. Maybe I'm only going to keep 1. Maybe that one property is a 10 unit where all 10 units, where each rent is $1,000 a month. So that's bringing in $10,000 a month in gross rents. Maybe you sell off a whole bunch and then you just pay this off in cash. Now you've got that $10,000 a month. Clearly there's expenses. There's utilities. There's still taxes, insurance, property taxes, insurances, that sort of stuff. But, that might only cost you $3,000 in expenses, right? Now you have $7,000 left over a month in cash flow. I'd feel pretty good about taking out of that $7,000 a month. I would feel pretty good with taking, 5,000 of it and leaving 2,000 in there as an emergency fund or whatever, in case something happens, right? I'd feel pretty damn good about that. So again, it's all about holding. What did you guys think about the video? Let me know. I know I can ramble a little bit. I'm going to try and condense these a little bit more, but I think this is a pretty important topic. And, a lot of people say, oh, Jeff, why are you still doing what you're doing? Don't you own a whole bunch of properties? Like, yeah, I own a whole bunch of properties, but, yes, one property is bringing in $1,700 a month in cash flow. One's bringing $200 a month. One's bringing $500 a month. One's bringing $7,000 a month. One's bringing, $3,000 a month. But then again, also, I have a partner for, 20, 24, 30, like 36 of my units, I have partner, right? So, yes, I'm the majority holder. So I get a little bit more, but I got to partition off some of that cash flow. If I start drawing out, if a property, if one of those properties is doing $7,000 a month, my take might only be 4,000 of that, right? So, it adds up. I'm getting closer to a position where I can do that. But for me, say for example, if I needed $100,000 a year for a salary, right? I want to make sure personally that my real estate portfolio is bringing in a good $150,000 a year in cash flow before I'm willing to draw $100,000 a year. And that still leaves me with another $50K a year in reserves. And I would clearly have reserves in there anyway, but in case doomsday happens and something crazy thing happens, because I don't want to have to go into my own personal pocket to service these rental properties. Does that make sense? So the moment I get to my number, because in theory, yes, I could quit my job right now and just live off of the property, but man, I'd be stressed and I would have to change some of my lifestyle a little bit. I don't want to change my lifestyle. I like my lifestyle, right? So I want to be able to keep the same lifestyle for my family and not have to stress. And, also when you're fully reliant on your real estate cash flow, you will start to make decisions based off of trying to get maximum income. And you should do that as a business anyway, but you'll do it in a way that maybe I'm trying to get a little bit too much on rents. Maybe I'm asking a little bit too much. Maybe if the rents are typically $1,200, maybe I'm trying to get $1,250. And then you start making mistakes and that property sits for vacant for an extra month. Well, that extra month, if you would have just taken the $1,200, you've just lost out on $1,200 of income right there, because you're trying to squeeze as much juice out of the lemon as possible, right? And when you don't have that pressure, you can start to make sound decisions. But yes, I don't want to vilify cash flow, but I do want it to be realistic for you guys, okay? I want you to understand what you're getting yourself into. This is a long game. It's not a short game. And there are some times you can get deals that's like, wow, this is cash flowing $1,000 a month right off the rip. I've done it. I have done it. I've done it multiple times. But I've also did it when interest rates were in 2s. They're not in 2s anymore. Very hard to do that unless you're getting a property at an absolute steal. And you're not going to get that on the MLS. So, be realistic. That's the truth of cash flow. Let me know in the comment section. If you have any comments, you want anything answered, let me know. Make sure to hit that like button, guys. Thumbs up. Helps out a great deal. Thank you so much, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace out.